Well, welcome to this coffee break, and I wanted to look at the whole thing of eldership teams and what does a healthy eldership team look like in a local church. I do believe firstly that an eldership team is a team. It's a team that has a leader rather than a leader that has a team. That dynamic is really quite important, that there is a plurality of genuine mutual accountability and responsibility for a local church's affairs. We complement one another with our different personalities and gifts. We recognise the particular grace on one of the team to perhaps lead and shape the formation of the vision that collectively we own together. That's really important, but it's got to be very much a team. So even in the settings I'm used to working in, probably the large majority of the decisions are made by corporately coming to a sense of agreement together. A percentage will be made by a sensing God speaking, so we line up with that. Only every now and again will there be perhaps a decision that the team leader has to make, which everyone is then happy for him to make a decision on, because one has to be made if we can't wait any longer for something to be reached together. So that's really important. The second thing is about what kind of role do elders have? Well, I think words like shepherding, guarding, protecting, those are biblical words. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, he leads me into green pastures." There's something of a sense of leadership. Eldership is something that helps people move into things that are going to be fruitful for them. It's not a static thing, it's a leadership thing. I suppose I define it perhaps as eldership is something that creates an environment whereby the people of God can flourish. And helps people want to flourish. It's that kind of a dynamic. It's a leading into green pasture. It's a shepherd looking for where there's going to be something that's safe and good and wholesome and nourishing for those within his care. I think the other thing is that it is very much about character, even more than gift. The qualifications in Timothy and Titus are to do primarily with the kind of life someone is leading. We actually set an example by how we live more than by what we say. Obviously, you've got to be able to communicate and teach well, and someone within the teams, or some people within the team, are going to have that gift more than others on a public way. But living life in a way that disciples and changes and helps people bring change in their lives for godly improvement and maturity has got to be right up there. Paul mostly said, "Observe how I live," rather than "do what I say." The other thing about eldership, which is a really important one, it's in the Bible, is that it is for men only. The Bible doesn't give any incidences of women elders. In fact, in Timothy, it says quite the reverse, that it's the responsibility of men to take up that position. Now, that's not a capability issue, it's a responsibility issue. I do personally believe in leadership that's both male and female, and I work with many churches that have outstanding women leaders. I think when we talk about eldership, we're talking about governmental responsibility for the overall weight of a local church falling on the shoulders of men that God asks to take responsibility. It's exactly the same as we see in the Trinity. For God so loved the world, he sent his Son. The Father sent the Son. Now, we wouldn't say that Jesus is less than the Father. There's an equality, there's shared godhood, but yet the Son submits himself in the way of functioning in a way that glorifies his Father. And in the same way, men and women rightly relating together is an honouring and a magnifying of the diversity and yet the glorious unity of the Trinity. We see the same thing even in the curse that Adam and Eve had to then live with, that where it says, your desire to Eve, your desire will be for him and he will rule over you. There's something of a fracture, of a dysfunction in the way that men and women function together. And that's really important in the church. We reverse that curse and we show a beautiful example of total equality, like we see in Genesis 2, rule together, take dominion together. There's no shortage of authority for both men and women, but there is nevertheless a complementarity. There is something where God asks men to take responsibility for governmental leadership in local churches. And I believe actually that helps flourish, that helps men and women flourish in that safe, secure environment. That's a really important distinction. And at the end of the day, if in our culture we don't like it, it is in the Bible. And that is the thing that we, in the end, bring our lives up alongside. So that's really important. I think the last one is about hierarchy and titles. Titles are only ever there to denote role. They're never there to give status. And when we use titles like elder or pastor or senior pastor, all those things should only ever be there to define and describe what somebody does, rather than what their value or seniority is in terms of a title giving hierarchy or status. It's a definition of a role. So there's some things to ponder. Hope you found that coffee break useful.